Hey everyone, we're working on domain and range today. It's still part of our function relation stuff. Just trying to figure out what the domain and range are, and we'll kind of go from there. We're going to be identifying some functions today. We're going to be identifying domains and ranges, and then there's homework kind of doing the same thing. So a domain and a range. First of all, the domain is the set of numbers or the inputs to a function that's going to determine the value of the function. So the easiest way to think of the domain is this is all the x values of our equation or our function or whatever we're looking at. Whoops. Values. Yes. Sorry about that, everyone. Values. So everything we can put in for x, that's going to be our domain. It could be specific numbers, depending on the type of function we're looking at. It could be every number from negative infinity to positive infinity, depending again on what type of function we're looking at. We'll see about later on what I'm talking about, where the different types of functions, and then how we're going to determine what the domains and ranges are. Whoops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. The range, that's the set of outputs, the set of numbers that are the output. So we plug in some value for x, we get some output for our y value. Or yesterday we were talking about the f of x value. So those are the numbers that are generated. These are all the y values. That our function can take. Again, this could be from negative infinity to positive infinity. It could be a specific set of numbers depending on what our function looks like. It could be all one number. It's like every number in our output could end up being 4. So then our range is going to be 4. It just, again, depends on what type of function we're looking at. We'll kind of see what they look like as we go through. So just kind of keep in mind that the domain is all the x's, the range is all the y's. Okay, so here's our first example. We're going to take this function that we have. They've given us a bunch of points. We're trying to figure out what the domain and the range are of this group of points. So we're going to start off with our domain. We always start with the x values first. And in our example like this, it's just as easy as kind of going through and seeing what all the numbers are. What we have to remember, though, is the domains and ranges are listed from the lowest number to the highest number. So I look and I see I have -3 and a -3, so I have -3 twice. We only need to list it once, and I've taken care of the -3. I look, my next lowest number is -2, so I will put -2 in. My next lowest x value is 1, and then my last one is 3. And then we close it up with a funky bracket, or you can do parentheses. I'm okay with either one. But just know that that's the domain. Those are the only values in my function that x can take, is whatever's in our list. So now the range, we do the exact same thing now just for the y values. Again, we start with the funky squiggly bracket. I look, my lowest y value is that -4. My next lowest one is 0. So taking care of that. Then I have 1, 2, and 5. So again, we only list each number as once. So we're not going to list it multiple times like we had in our domain. We have 5 ordered pair, but we only have 4 numbers in our domain because -3 was listed twice. We have 5 numbers in our range. So we listed all 5 because none of them were listed twice. What we can do, we noticed as well as we were going through it, is like we have -3 has 2 different values for y. So this actually is not a function. So kind of when we're identifying the domain and the range, that kind of helps us also see what the functions are, whether it is a function or it's not a function. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. Here are 2 examples for you to try. Go through and figure out what the domain is, figure out what the range is, list them out, and then come back again and check your work. I'm going to have you enter those in the Edpuzzle and then come back and check and see if you were right. Okay, so here's what we had. The first one, the domain should have been -1, 0, 2, 3, and 5. The range was just -3, -5, -3, -2, listed from lowest to highest. Domain for the second one, -2, 0, 2, 3. The range, -4, -1, 1, 3, and 4. Makes sense. I think it's pretty straightforward. So all we're going to be doing today is identifying domains and ranges as we go through. Okay. Take a few minutes and fill in this chart. It's kind of going through the different ways we can show what a function is. I know we haven't talked about the graphs yet, so try to figure out what the domain and range for that one is and whether it's a function. But kind of go through, list the domain, list the range, and then tell me whether they're functions or not. Again, take your time. I'm going to have you kind of plug in a couple different answers in Edpuzzle just so I make sure that you're doing it and understand what you're doing. And then come back and check your work. Okay, so here's all your answers. You can pause the video here, kind of check and see that I got what I was supposed to get. I know we haven't really talked about this type of notation for it yet. We'll get to that in a minute. And then the same thing here with the equation one. We haven't really talked about what the domain and range can be for that, but again, it's something we'll talk about a little bit later on in class. So don't worry if you didn't get those correct. We'll come back to it and we'll kind of explain why those are different than the other three. Okay? Okay, so now moving on. Again, there's a chart I want you to work on. I want you to list out the first two lines have the ordered pairs listed. So fill in the table, fill in the mapping diagram we worked on yesterday, and then graph them out. You're just plotting the points. The last one, they give you points in a graph. Fill in the same thing. Fill in the mapping diagram, fill in the table, and then fill in what the ordered pairs are. And then in all three of them, determine whether it's determine the domains and ranges of them, list them out. Again, I'm going to plug in some answers for you to kind of plop in for Edpuzzle, and then come back and check your work. Okay, so we kind of look at this. We see all the information again is filled in, so you can see what we have. The table's filled in, the domains and ranges are listed. So again, double check your work. If you have to pause the video, that's okay. The mapping diagrams and then the graphs. Quickly, what I'm going to kind of point out is this first one was not a function. Because there are two values for -3. We're going to talk about that in a minute, kind of see how it is. The last two, these were both functions. So these are functions. Okay? So I hope, like I say, I hope everybody's understanding this, kind of following along. It's not that difficult, so everything should be okay. So we're going to identify domains and ranges from a graph. What we're looking at here, if you see arrows on your graph, so we have kind of a line going off this way, we have a line going off this way, going on forever, so they're extending into our infinity. Our domain is the x value. Remember, domains are x's, so we're going into infinity both ways on the x's. Your domain here is going to be all real numbers, because we can plug in anything. I'm going to just use the hashtag symbol for the numbers. We can plug in anything there for our domain. Because it's a line, so we're not just counting the ones and the twos, we're counting all the little spots in between the 1 and 2 and all those. And it goes on, because the arrow goes on, it's forever. We can also list it as -infinity is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to +infinity. So that's another way to list the domain as well. Same for the range, if the range covered that too. The range, though, we look at our range value. We're not going any lower than -2 because the graph doesn't go below there. The lines are pointing off infinity in the positive upward direction, so we're only going to get to -2 because that's where we stop. So here my range is going to be -2 is less than or equal to 9, because we actually touch to y, sorry. We actually touch -2, which is going to be less than or equal to +infinity. Again, we're never really going to get to +infinity, so it's never going to equal, but it's always putting equal because it could get there. Okay, for the next one, the domain of the next one, we kind of look and see it's a circle. So we're only going from the furthest left we go to the negative side is -3. The furthest right we go is +3. So our domain here is going to be -3 less than or equal to x, less than or equal to 3, because we're actually touching those points on the x-axis. Same thing on the range we look. We never go higher than +3. We never go lower than -3. So our range would be the same, -3 less than or equal to x, less than or equal to 3. Does that make sense? Okay, take a few minutes. On the next one, kind of identify the slopes and the ranges on the slope, the domain and the range, sorry, not the slope. The domain and the range on these, Try to figure out what you think they are. Plug in your answers to Edpuzzle and then come back and check your work again. Okay, so here we go. The first one, it's all real numbers, or again, the negative infinity to positive infinity. Same thing for the range, because the lines are kind of pointing down. Even though they don't look like they're ever going to get there, they will. Domain for the second one, again, is all real numbers because we're pointing down to the infinity side. So we're going left and right all the way. The range, though, we never go higher than +4. So we're going to have negative infinity to +4 for our range there. Okay. So to do a function, we're going to try to, from a graph, we're going to look for the vertical line test. Basically what that is you're going to kind of scan from the left to right and see if there's any point on our function, either it be dots or a continuous line that we cross over the 2 points at the same time. So kind of think of a ruler moving across the page as we kind of go through that. So there are two types of functions we have. We have discrete functions, and then we have continuous functions. A discrete function is just a series of specific dots. So it's points on the graph. They're not connected by any lines. It's just a point here, a point there, a point there, but it can still be a function. Continuous, that's the function that has all the points marked by a line. So think of the linear equation we'll work with a little bit later on. They kind of go on forever. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so here's our example. We're going to look. What I'm going to do is where I have my points, I'm just going to draw lines through. I see already this is not a function because I've crossed 2 points. Just kind of double check. This is a discrete function because it is just points. So again, this is discrete. Has the points. We kind of go through. That's not a function. This one here, it's a continuous line. Just kind of slash in some lines. We never cross more than 1 point, so this one's a function. Does that make sense? Okay. So here, take a few minutes. Example for you. Try to figure out what they are. Pause, and then just answer an Edpuzzle if they're functions or not, and then come back and check your work. Okay, so we see first one is discrete. We never cross 2 points with a vertical line, so that's a function. Same thing with the last one. It's continuous. Again, we never cross with 2 points, so that is a function as well. Okay, so go out, check Google Classroom for your homework, and I will talk to everybody tomorrow. So remember, use the video, the Zoom link that we used last Wednesday for tomorrow's class. Okay, I will talk to everyone later.